It's a summer evening on the western edge of the Twin Cities, and the trail ahead runs straight and quiet through the trees. Tonight we're riding 12 miles by e-bike through 3 Minnesota suburbs that most people just drive past. But under these wheels is a landscape stitched together by railroads, flour mills, tractor factories, and raspberry fields. Let's roll. We're just west of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the near suburbs of Minnetonka, St. Louis Park, and Hopkins. This whole route sits in the 9-Mile Creek and Minnehaha Creek country, on land that drains east toward the Mississippi. It looks like ordinary suburbia. It is anything but ordinary. We start at Lone Lake Park in Minnetonka, 146 acres of restored prairie, woods, and wetland tucked into the corner of a first-ring suburb. Long before it was a park, this was the Dvorak family homestead, a dairy farm with fruit and vegetable fields. The cabin they bought in 1888 actually stood here until 1989. The city bought the land for a park in 1973, and today it holds miles of hiking and mountain bike trail. The deeper story starts earlier. This is the homeland of the Dakota people, and their words are still written across every map here. Minnetonka, Minnehaha, Minnesota itself. In 1851, the treaties of Traverse des Sioux and Mendota ceded roughly 24 million acres across this part of the country, opening the land west of the Mississippi to settlement. For thousands of years before that, this was a crossroads, a place of crossings and gathering, long before it was ever a rail corridor. And a rail corridor is exactly what we're riding. This smooth path was once a freight railroad, part of the Minneapolis and St. Louis line laid down around 1870. For over a century, trains hauled grain and goods along here until the railroads pulled out between 1980 and 1990. The county bought the corridor, and the Three Rivers Park District turned the old rail bed into the trail beneath us now. The trail carries us into Hopkins, where several regional trails all converge near the site of the old railroad depot. It's a natural crossroads, and it's the reason this town exists at all. Hopkins was born as a factory town. In 1887, the Minneapolis Thrashing Machine Company built its works here, and it became the largest employer in all of western Hennepin County. A land company platted worker housing around it, and in 1893, the residents incorporated their town under the name West Minneapolis, with just over 1,100 people. That thrashing machine company grew into something famous. In 1929, it became Minneapolis Moline, and Hopkins was its headquarters, one of the great American makers of tractors and farm machinery well into the 1960s. In 1928, the village had already renamed itself Hopkins, after Harley Hopkins, an early homesteader and the town's first postmaster. Between the factories, Hopkins grew something sweeter. For a stretch of years, this was known as the raspberry capital of the world, with more than 800 acres planted in raspberries at its peak. In the depths of the Great Depression, in the mid-1930s, the town launched a raspberry festival to lift local business. Nearly a century later, that festival still runs every summer. The heart of it all is Hopkins Mainstreet, a row of old brick storefronts that survived the decades. In January of 2022, the Hopkins Commercial Historic District, 32 contributing buildings along Main Street, was added to the National Register of Historic Places. You're looking at a small-town Main Street old enough to be federally recognized. Now we cross into St. Louis Park, and here's a fact worth getting right. It is not named after St. Louis, Missouri. It's named for the Minneapolis and St. Louis Railway that ran through it. And in 1899, right here, a builder poured the world's first cylindrical concrete grain elevator, 68 feet tall, formed ring by ring in stacked concrete. That design became the industry standard worldwide. It still stands today, on the grounds of the company we know as Nordic Ware. The name Minnetonka comes from the Dakota words for big water. Back in 1852, settlers built a sawmill on Minnehaha Creek, the first privately run mill in Minnesota west of the Mississippi. By the 1880s, Minnetonka Mills was turning out around 400 barrels of flour a day. And when the railroad reached the lake, Minnetonka became a nationally famous summer resort, its shoreline lined with grand hotels. Now the light is going gold, and we turn back toward Lone Lake. 12 miles, 3 suburbs, and underneath all of it 170 years of milling, farming, building, and railroading. Most of it invisible unless you slow down to the speed of a bike. That's the ride. If you like exploring the hidden history under ordinary places, subscribe and come along on the next one. New trails from around the world every week right here on Free World Explorer. See you out there.